Welcome to The Real Story with Jeannie Ives. You are in for a treat today as a listener. I have in my studio with me Leslie Mendoza. She is an 18-year high school student from Lyons Township High School. You may have heard some reports about Lyons Township High School as I've covered it in earlier podcasts, but they are the home of some of the most vicious attacks that have occurred from one student to another student. Meanwhile, as the administration completely ignored that. We're going to talk about that, but we're going to talk about a lot more than just that simple attack that happened about 10 days ago at her own high school. Leslie Mendoza has tried to start a Turning Point USA chapter and was rejected wholesale by everybody in the administration. She is a conservative school girl at this public high school, and she has fought resistance the entire way for even starting a conservative club. Meanwhile, she is absolutely inundated with all the sorts of leftist talking points and ideology that you can imagine that we've discussed ad nauseum again on our program. So, Leslie, welcome to my program.
Thank you for having me, Jeannie.
Yes, thank you for driving over after school. So you've got how many days left before you graduate?
Got 3 officially now.
3 official days. Well, you know what? Fortunately, this podcast will maybe be released on this very day that you are out of high school.
Awesome.
Okay,
Perfect.
So it's great for you to come on because I think that a lot of kids your age are intimidated by really publicly stating their views, but not
absolutely.
you.
Yeah.
Yep. So where'd you get this courage? Where'd it come from?
So I grew up watching Charlie Kirk.
Okay.
And I would spend time watching his crazy socialist takedowns on YouTube. And I would think to myself, I want to be like Charlie Kirk. And over time, this courage just kind of grew up as I was growing up. And then it wasn't until really my sophomore year of high school where I realized how difficult it really was to be a conservative student in today's day and age. And I realized that other students that tried speaking out were being shunned and they were just being absolutely canceled by every other student. So I wanted to give students a platform where they could engage with people like people should normally do. Mm-hmm. And nowadays that's unheard of.
Well, let's just go back a little bit here. So you said that you watched Charlie Kirk videos and you really wanted to be like Charlie Kirk. You understood what he was talking about. So obviously his message resonated with you. And is that because it's just common sense?
Yeah.
Don't you think that? I mean,
Yeah,
I think a lot
absolutely.
of what Charlie Kirk talks about is just common sense. For example, we don't bail out other people's student loans.
Yeah.
Right? Does that make sense to most people?
Absolutely.
Right.
And it's insane to think that it's changed over time somehow. And people think that we have a responsibility for other people, their choices and stuff. Mm-hmm. So.
Right. So Lyons Township High School is in a wealthy suburb of Chicago.
It is.
And the whole idea, behind a lot of people sending their kids to or moving out to the suburbs is to essentially get away from other public schools that don't do so well.
Yeah.
And so the perception is that Lyons Township High School is a very good high school.
At least it used to be.
Let's talk about that because I'm looking at their academic standards right now on the Illinois State Board of Education website. And according to them, their latest report shows that only 54% of the students even read at grade level.
Yep.
And only 51% of the students, half the students read and do math at grade level. Half.
Absolutely insane.
And so is that sort of your, perception as you go through your classes?
Absolutely. I think over time, and not just because of COVID,
Mm-hmm.
it has definitely declined because the administration has just been focusing on things aside from students' education. And it's disappointing to see because, like you said, we used to be one of the top schools in the nation. And to see it drastically drop so much, it's definitely disappointing.
So what's going on in the classroom? Tell us, Leslie.
Now it's all this CRT and indoctrination. It's every single aspect that you can imagine. They're just trying to push their personal views on students, and it's not about education and academics anymore. They've just kind of completely switched what their goal is, and it's like an indoctrination camp.
So you're a senior there.
I am.
You've been there for 4 years,
Yep.
that entire that school system the entire time?
Yes, ma'am.
So in 4 years, have you seen a noticeable change in what they talk about and how they talk about issues in the classroom?
Absolutely.
Can you give me some examples?
It was definitely the start of COVID.
Okay.
When teachers really didn't have that accountability of students in their classrooms, right? So it kind of went from, it was education, what we were supposed to be learning, and then we went home online, and it wasn't until parents started noticing what their kids were learning because they were hearing it. And it was BLM, CRT, LGBTQ, and all the lessons somewhat changed from your...
How so? So give me an example from a class where
let's say
you
social
could say,
studies.
Okay.
Where normally we'd be learning American studies. Now this is the racist history of America. And it's just absolutely changed in, let's say, science, right? It used to be basic biology, and now it's transgenderism and all of this other stuff.
Would they actually discuss transgenderism in the classroom in a biology class?
Yeah.
Okay, that just makes no sense because scientifically speaking, there are only two sexes. Basic biology. Unless you are intersex, which is a very, very, very rare form and genetically a genetic issue. Yeah. So then you decide that you need to, speak up for yourself and for other kids, and you attempt to start a Turning Point USA club. What happens?
So I attempted to start the chapter last January. And this was during COVID, so I got a group of kids together that would be my executive board, went to my director of student activities and sent them the proposal, got it all figured out, worked with Turning Point headquarters, and we got everything established through the organization, so everything was fine there. 6 months later, after we submit the proposal, they get back to us and said that they had denied the proposal because we're on our third excuse from them now. The first time was they don't accept 501c3s.
Is that true?
It's not, because my team actually went under our official clubs and activities that are a part of the school and found that 10 of them were 501c3s.
Okay, so that's not true.
And so it's not.
Okay.
The second one was partisanship, and that's kind of what they've stuck with.
That you're a partisan organization?
Yeah, Turning Point USA is legally a nonpartisan organization, right? 501c3s can't be partisan.
Well, a lot of what Turning Point USA discusses about may be considered conservative, but it's also considered libertarian.
Yeah.
And there's conservatives like me who would not want to be called a libertarian,
absolutely,
quite frankly. So I think that they don't know what they don't know.
No, absolutely. And I mean, these are legal facts, right?
Right.
So
that's right.
We've presented them with this, and it's just, they don't care. They really don't care. And it's unfortunate because we have groups that advocate for every other political thing that's on the other side of the aisle.
Okay, give me an example of other groups they have that are sort of left-leaning.
We have an LGBTQ club that is really just turned into our liberal club of LT.
Okay.
Our Model UN club, which is typically supposed to be nonpartisan.
Yes, really, and I was in full disclosure. I participated in Model UN at West Point. We didn't have in high school. We were national champions.
Well, I'm sure it's changed.
So I think it's probably changed a ton in 35 years. I graduated
Absolutely
35 years ago this May.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway.
So yeah.
Side note there, but I'm sure there's been a change. So MUN is a liberal club.
All liberal now.
It's all liberal.
It absolutely is.
I have no doubt about that. Okay. What else?
Actually, a couple weeks ago, we had our LT Save Promise Club, which is they do like advocacy for Sandy Hook survivors. They actually hosted Marie Newman, and our president of our school board was the first person at the door to greet Marie Newman.
Wow. Okay. Yep.
I mean, and the list goes on.
Okay.
So it's just clubs that up front, they're nonpartisan. And then everything that they do, I mean, these school officials don't go into whatever these organizations are doing, right? And as far as like BLM stuff, our superintendent walked with BLM when they did their march downtown LaGrange last year.
Okay, well, the Glenbard District 87 high school district, which is Glenbard North, South, East, and West, and that's kind of centered in Dupage. So it's Glendale Heights, Carroll Stream, Glen Ellen, Lombard area. Okay, they actually, after the George Floyd riots and the BLM stuff started to spring up again, they actually created a video with teachers on it that was pro-BLM. And so, and they put that out on their official website. So, I mean, so they're doing this. Are you seeing that same sort of advocacy for BLM? I know that there is in one of our middle schools here in the Wheaton Warrenville school system, there was a teacher who has a BLM flag flying in his classroom. I don't know that that's been taken down yet, although it's been requested to be taken down. So is that the type of stuff you're seeing? Like it's overt, it's not even hidden?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the basement of our school, we actually have a mural that was made in the summer of 2020 by students. It's like a Black Lives Matter mural.
That's a Marxist organization that wants to destroy the neutral family.
It's exactly what it is. And I've brought it up to my Board of Education several times, right? We want to talk about partisanship. Let's talk about this mural. Let's talk about our superintendent that has attended Black Lives Matter marches.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, nothing's partisan
right.
unless it's conservative, so...
Okay, so essentially now, have you seen direct instruction on diversity, equity, inclusion happening in the classroom or in the school system?
Yeah.
Okay, because I do know that we've got this article here from West Coast News, and the title says, "In the wake of a black-on-white Lyons Township High School student attack, the school board addresses white privilege in a new discipline plan." And it says 10 days after the student Heaven Washington's brutal racially inspired in-school attack that led to battery charges, a Lyons Township High School administrator said the school plans to be more lenient in punishing non-white students for once major transgressions like fighting and drug use. Jennifer Rowe, LT's Director of Diversity and Inclusion, hired last August to improve race relations at the school, told Lyons Township School Board Monday that she's replacing the school's existing code of conduct with a new one that would result in more oral warnings and fewer suspensions and expulsions, keeping even serious non-white student offenders like Washington on campus. Has there been a breakdown in discipline at the school?
This is recent.
Okay.
I definitely think that after this attack that happened by Heaven Washington, they've made it clear that they obviously want things to change.
Okay, so up until the attack, though, was there sort of lip service paid to any other transgressions that happened that were of a serious nature?
We really haven't had something this serious until this happened.
Okay, so do you know anything about that incident?
I do, because Heaven and I have a little bit of a history.
Oh, you have a history with her too.
We do.
Okay.
So it was during the mask mandate. I don't even know what we call that period of time, where we had students that were just absolutely refusing to comply with the administrators. After Thomas DeVore won his TRO case, that very next Monday, I got together with 400 other students, and we refused to comply and wear a mask anymore, right?
That's right, because it's a form of quarantine, and they need a court order specific to each individual in order to require you to wear a mask, and that's what that court case said.
Yeah.
So you knew your rights.
I did. And we've gotten a ton of backlash from it. And Heaven was actually one of the students that went on her social media, and I had made a post about the mask protest. And Heaven sent me this really long paragraph and posted it onto her social media, and it went into my message requests, and I kind of ignored it, just like every other message that I've gotten that week. And it wasn't until a couple weeks ago that I put two and two together, and I realized that it was the same person, but she actually went to a school board meeting. That was a special school board meeting that they did during that time. She was with her family, and I spoke at that board meeting, and so did she. And she realized who I was, obviously because she had sent me that message, and she just absolutely harassed me the whole time, because she kind of realized that I was the one that was behind kind of getting everyone together to,
well, good for you. So what's the feeling? What do kids think? What's their reaction in the wake of the Heaven Washington attack? Are they much more aware of where these racial conflicts are coming from and what's precipitating them? I mean, I personally think that they're treating some people that they are victims and that they're going to be able to get away with a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
rather than enforcing the standards equally on everybody.
Absolutely. So what happened with Heaven happened at our South Campus.
Okay.
So freshman, sophomore, and then I go to North Campus because I'm a senior. But there have been freshmen and sophomores that have organized marches or rallies in support of Heaven
After the attack.
after the attack.
After the attack. And she brutally attacked. I saw the video. I watched it. It was a pretty brutal attack.
It's disturbing.
It's very disturbing that that would happen in a high school hallway and nobody else would come to her defense.
Absolutely. And knowing that the administrators knew
There wasn't
about
some
it,
strong football player or wrestler around to basically break them up. They just let it happen.
Where that happened was actually at one of the exits of our gym locker rooms. Unless you're coming in and out of gym, no one is usually around there. It's one of like the most empty hallways in that school. So she obviously had it pretty planned.
I mean, obviously she stalked her, knew her schedule.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
And
Despicable.
the girl that unfortunately got beat up, knew that Heaven was planning on doing this, went to the administrators, told them that she felt threatened. The administrators sent her back to class, and then that very next hour was when she got attacked.
Yes, so I think there's going to be some consequences for them, and there should be because they have not done that. So, you know, in the wake of this, what do you think the school's going to do? Are they going to double down on DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion instruction, or are they going to smarten up and start to hold individuals accountable for their individual actions?
I want to say that they're going to be smart and hold students accountable for the things that they've done.
Mm-hmm.
But with how they've been treating students in the past, I can't say that I'm confident in that response.
Okay, so let's go into a different area, academics and academic performance. Are you under the same system that many schools have gone to, which is, you know, you get a 50% no matter what work you do?
Yes.
Okay, that's complete crap.
Yeah.
Does your school still recognize class rank?
We do.
Okay.
Which is a little concerning because let's say you have an assignment due next week, right? You don't get it done. You have 2 weeks to make it up after that, but then you can still redo it depending on the grade.
Wow, that's really giving kids a pass. So, I mean, I think that they're going to, if any of those students move on to higher education, I think it'll be a massive wake-up call when their professor says, no, it's late, you get a 0.
Yeah.
And you're getting ready to fail out of college at a cost of $40,000 a year.
It's a massive setback for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think they realize
bad habits. They're basically building bad habits in
100%. Children. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They're not setting these kids up for success.
No, not at all.
So I definitely, a lot of kids have taken advantage of that. And I think that's one of the reasons that we've definitely seen the academics drop drastically.
Yeah, absolutely. When, 10 kids walk in and only 5 walk out educated, we have a problem when this is happening in wealthy suburbs in the Chicago area and parents are just accepting it.
Absolutely.
Do you think that there should be more parental involvement in schools, or do you think that it's just about right?
I definitely think that parents have to get more involved and stay on top of their kids and their academics. I mean, it's high school, right?
Mm-hmm.
The expectations may have lowered, but it doesn't give students the right to really just blow stuff off, but because of the decisions that these administrators have made.
But what percentage of parents would you say even know that you get a 50% grade no matter what work you do or don't do? What percentage of parents know that you can blow off an assignment for 2 weeks and then even if you don't do it well, then you can do a makeup?
I'd probably say like 50.
50? Okay. I would probably say 10%. I don't think a lot of parents understand what's going on.
I would say to an extent, probably.
Okay. Great. Good. So another big fight, I mean, the whole masking thing.
Yeah.
That had to been one of those issues, I would think. There was more of like an 80% issue where most students felt like this was nonsense and it didn't matter what political side you were on. Would you say that's correct?
Yeah. I still can't believe it happened.
I can't either.
It's definitely insane, but I mean, we still have students that choose to wear a mask, and I have absolutely no problem with that. But it's become...
I have a little bit of a problem with that because the masks don't work. The masks don't work, so they've been told by somebody that if they wear this mask, that they're going to be protected.
Yeah.
And so somebody is feeding them with falsehoods, and I have a problem with that.
I think it's
I mean, they can do what they want, don't get me wrong, but I think it's an indication that they are, one, overly afraid of a virus that is, you know, they have a better chance of dying from a lightning strike.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
You know, and then also they've been fed and they're listening to folks who don't know what they're talking about, and they're believing this stuff.
Yeah.
So they're very susceptible then to believing whatever they hear from whatever authority they're hearing it from and not questioning it. Because anybody who would look at the masking situation in totality should understand that that this is nonsense.
Absolutely.
I mean, the types of masks, the way people wear masks, you know, the fact that people were wearing them in their own car, outside. I mean, I still see people walking around outside with a mask on. I'm like, you are nuts.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
And conversely, the fresh air is probably the best thing for you and your lungs.
Yeah, it absolutely is. But I definitely think I agree with that 100%.
Okay.
I definitely think that for some students or kids my age, it's turned into some sort of a social thing.
Oh.
Right? So I've seen students, they'll wear them for one class, they'll see their friends or something, and then they'll take it off. Or they'll see another group of people, and then they'll put it back on.
Wow.
So it's insane, and it blows my mind, which is why I really just think that some people do it to look good or please a certain group of people, which is insane to me.
So one more topic kind of on this realm where you have students buying into particular ideologies or issues that are not rooted in actual fact. And that would be, obviously, that boys can become girls can become boys, and that it's no big deal if a boy competes on a women's, you know, soccer team or swimming team or whatever it might be. I mean, what is the prevalence of thought? I mean, I think for most part, most students just want to avoid the topic. They don't want to talk about it. You do your thing, I'll do my thing. But you do have situations now where it's impeding other people's, particularly women's, ability to progress in their own sport. It makes both men and women uncomfortable when there's shared private spaces between the two sexes. But how is this? Is it even an issue at Lyons Township High School? It might not even be an issue.
I definitely think the topic is.
Okay, the topic is.
We haven't seen it really at our school at all.
Okay, good.
But there's definitely kids that are talking about it, and there's social media posts and all this other stuff. So I would just say the topic is definitely on there. Your typical liberal students that are pro BLM, LGBTQ. This is definitely one of those things that it's been a hot topic for a while.
Mm-hmm. Are there outwardly teachers who are promoting and that? For example, my daughter was presented by her teacher with a getting to know you sheet, and I've talked about this in all my podcasts before, so it's not new. And the third question was, what are your pronouns? Well, I immediately fired off a email to the principal and the teacher and said, we don't do that. You're not asking that.
Absolutely.
So is that something that goes on, though, that you have teachers that are asking those questions and ferreting out the information from students?
Yep. It was definitely beginning of the semester and beginning of the year was definitely when we saw it the most, when teachers are trying to get to know students. It happened to me in one of my classes, but I know there's other kids that had almost every teacher ask them.
Did they ask them in writing on a piece of paper, or did they ask them up front in front of the class?
It was either like a survey, like a get to know you survey, or a piece of paper.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we do have a problem with that because schools now are trying to hide students' particular assumed identities at school from parents who say that is not their identity and stop it right now. So, and that was my point back to the teacher. You can't be going against the parents, but they do think that they are the parent.
Yeah.
Another thing that I wanted to talk on while I've got you here. So I find it interesting that now schools have a lot of wraparound services. And, in some regards, some of those wraparound services are needed. But they were generally in the past mainly needed for kids who might have had behavioral issues. And it could have been they came from a wealthy family, poor family, didn't matter. Some kids had behavioral issues long before SEL ever became a buzzword in schools, social emotional learning. And now, though, it appears that as if they want to pry into every particular child's situation with what's happening at home and how are you feeling and here's your trusted adult at school. And it feels to me like they're trying to usurp parent authority rather than have the child look to the parents as the authority.
Absolutely. It's true.
Okay.
We just got word that there's these things that teachers are getting about, they're like little cards, almost like a little business card of questions that they can ask students regarding their mental health or regarding how they're feeling on a certain day and stuff, and then how they can go about treating that, we'll say, how they can handle certain situations. And I definitely think that it gets to a point where it's almost like an invasion, right?
So wait, how are these cards used? Or is it like, oh, so-and-so presents as, being distracted? Maybe I ask this question.
Yeah.
Or, is that what it is? Is it like a cheat sheet for teachers about what to look for?
Basically. It's like if you're in a certain situation and two students are arguing or something, this can be the cause, this can be a situation, and this is how you go about it.
How about you guys can take your fight, you can take your argument out of the classroom, and by the way, I'm moving your seats right now. I mean, be done with it.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
What happened to that?
Right.
And it's just all become such a complicated issue that should not be complicated whatsoever.
Yes. So, I mean, the teachers will like to complain to a number of people that they have to buy all their school supplies. They have to, they've got to be the parent. They've got to be the nurse. They've got to be the psychologist. They got to, all this other stuff. They got to make sure the kid gets lunch. Okay, there's parents that are neglectful. There is no doubt. And teachers do have a lot of roles that they end up filling for whatever to make sure that their classroom is a productive place. I understand that. And they do care about their kids. But at some point, the teachers need to stand up for themselves and say, not my job, not my issue.
Absolutely.
Go here.
I completely agree.
And I think that the administration is saying, yes, your job, yes, your issue, and here's what you have to do. And that eats up a lot of extra time for the teacher.
Yeah.
And it should not be her
worry. I mean, this has happened a lot over the last couple of months, I would say, right? There's teachers that are being forced to teach students about things that they should not be teaching. And it's rare to see teachers that will actually be willing to stand up to administrators or whoever the head of their chair is and say, I'm not teaching this. I have absolutely no right to be teaching these students this. But I mean, it's that sense of fear that I think has been very common over the last 2 years, that they just don't have the courage to stand up to their administrators.
Yep. Wow. Well, how do you feel about leaving high school?
I could not be more excited. I could not be more excited.
And what's next for you if you want to share with our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually going to be taking a gap year and going to be moving down to Phoenix, where Turning Point USA headquarters are, to be working on their advancement team.
Terrific.
Yeah,
great.
Thank you.
Well, I met Charlie when he first was getting started in 2012, when nobody knew who Charlie Kirk was. Yeah. I met him up in Barrington, and he's just the work he has done in just a decade is just phenomenal.
It's amazing.
Phenomenal. He's a friend, and I'm so happy that you're going to be working with him. That's terrific.
You.
Great.
Yeah. So we're coming up on our 10 years here pretty soon, and it's amazing. I mean, still, every time that I hear him speak, it blows my mind.
Yes.
And, definitely someone that I'm going to continue to look up to, because I learned so much from him. So.
Well, terrific. Well, I hope that you have left your conservative push behind with some other students that can pick up the cause at Lyons Township High School.
Absolutely.
We certainly need more of you to speak up at schools and not to be afraid. I really appreciate the example that you have set for others, because you've become kind of your own phenom in the suburbs with what you have done to stand up for your rights in Lyons Township. So we really appreciate you, Leslie. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Welcome back to our second segment of The Real Story with Jeannie Ives. I'm going to go through a couple of interesting items that I think that everybody should be aware of. Let's start with the high gas prices. Well, just the other day, my son was driving through Warrenville, Illinois, this small, really beautiful little town along the Dupage, west branch of the Dupage River. And what did he spot at the BP station? Oh my gosh, $5 a gallon gas. Well, actually, $4.99 if you want the premium, $4.89 a gallon for just your regular. That's right, $4.89 a gallon at the BP station in Warrenville, Illinois. I mean, this is just unbelievable. Who would have thought that we'd be at $5 a gallon gas? I don't know if I ever thought that I would see it in my lifetime, but we are looking at it right now here in the state of Illinois. So, who's to blame for this? Well, one thing Pritzker and company could do is they could absolutely give everybody a gas tax reprieve. Listen, they're about to get $17 billion in infrastructure money coming in from that $1 trillion infrastructure program that the Democrats and a handful of Republicans passed, part of Biden's big program last year. $17 billion supposed to come to Illinois. Well, why don't we give us a tax reprieve? I mean, this is actually real money to everybody. And in Illinois, you're paying 50 to 60 cents a gallon for taxes to begin with. Why don't you give us a reprieve, make us a little bit more competitive, and give us some definite relief? That's what they could do, but of course they refuse to. Again, on taxes too, let's talk about this most alarming story. Just came out from Wire Points today, and the title of that is 30 Years of Pain. Illinoisans suffer as property tax bills grow far faster than household incomes and home values. And this is a special report by Wire Points. Listen, those people put out the best stuff. I know you've heard it before from me again, but I'm going to tell you again. You need to go to wirepoints.org and sign up for their daily emails, and they'll give you a whole set of articles related to Illinois, and including their original reports and their own work. And so this is a report by Ted Dabrowski and John Klinger, and it talks specifically about Illinois property taxes. And again, they say any way you cut them, the residential property taxes Illinoisans pay are punitive, and they are not kidding themselves. So this year, Illinois surpassed New Jersey for having the highest effective tax rate out of any other state in the nation. That's right, the highest effective tax rate out of any other state in the nation at 1.86%. And it's the impact, though, on house prices and property taxes, of course, have contributed to Illinois suffering the nation's third worst growth in home values over the last 20 years. So your property taxes go up, guess what? Your home values drop, and that is the case. The other thing that's important to note here is that since 1990, the average property tax bill as a share of household income is up 62%. So as a percentage of your income, in 1990, it used to be that you paid 3.6% of your income to your property taxes. Now, in 2020, you pay 5.9% of your income just to pay your property taxes. Listen, we've lived that increase. We showed up and bought our first house in the Wheaton area in 1992. Here we are 30 years later, still here in Dupage County, and we have felt the property tax pinch as well. So we rank number one, not in the entire U.S. Of course, our neighbors, Iowa ranks number 10 at 1.3% effective property tax. Wisconsin's number 12, Missouri 22, Indiana 27, and Kentucky 34. So when we talk about competing and people just fleeing, not necessarily to Florida and Arizona, but just simply across the state lines to Indiana, that is exactly what's happening. And in fact, in Indiana, with their effective tax rate at 0.8%, less than 1%. That's exactly because Indiana said we have a 1% cap on the value of your home as what you'll pay in property taxes. They put that into law. Illinois should do the same thing. Looking across the state, and looking across the property tax increases as median household incomes have increased. Well, what you also see is from 1990, you've had residential property taxes per household increase 268%, while median household incomes have only increased 127%. What does this mean? It means, like I said before, that more and more of your income is sucked up into simply paying property taxes. You might as well be renting your home from the government at this point. And it's pretty alarming. It has a dramatic effect. And it also says here that most Illinois, they have really great charts. Again, I want you to go to wirepoints.org and read their full report on property taxes. But they say today 13 counties containing 70% of Illinois' population have residential property taxes that consume 5% or more of Illinois' household incomes. In another 40 counties, the burden runs from 3% to 4.9%. That's as a percentage of their household income. So, of course, it's Cook and the Collars, which is where you're going to get 70% of Illinois' population that lives there. And, of course, that's where the highest property tax rates are. When you're looking at counties as a percentage of household income that it takes to pay off your property taxes, of course, we've known this for a long time. I've known it for a long time. But Lake County has the highest amount property tax burden on your income, and that's 7.8% of your income goes to pay property taxes. Next up is Dupage County, no surprise, 7.2%, followed very quickly by Kendall and Will counties at 7.1%. So those are, the high property taxes are up here. We pay an inordinate amount of property taxes, and for what? I don't feel any safer living in Dupage. Well, I feel safer than in Cook County. I'll be honest with that. But can I say necessarily that the roads are better? I don't think so. Can I say that the schools are better than in parts of Kane County? I can't say that necessarily. But we certainly pay the property taxes here. So, let's see. Looking across the nation, Illinois is number 1, New Jersey's number 2, Connecticut, Vermont, and Pennsylvania round out the top 5. At the bottom 5, it's Hawaii, Alabama, Utah, Arizona, and Nevada. So, we're not doing too well when it comes to that. High gas prices because of high gas prices in Illinois compared to other states. Everybody's suffering from high gas prices, but they're particularly high in Illinois because of our high gas taxes, which is number 2 in the nation. And then you compound that with high property taxes, where we're number 1 in the nation. And guess what you get? You got a lot of people that are fed up with taxes and the situation in the state of Illinois. Hopefully they vote differently in November to make a change, because this is all a whole slew of bad policies built up over decades that has created this tax problem that we have right now. That's what it is. And the only way we get out of it is to elect different people and then take a bite at it at a time and reform our tax system. That's what we have to do. Otherwise, we're going to continue to have people flee this state. Just flee it. So there you go. The report's pretty lengthy. Again, I encourage you all to go ahead and take a look at that. All right, next, here's another reason that you may not want to, look at Illinois for your children to go to school. This is kind of alarming. You may remember that we covered the new DEI, the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, or the DI. Some people like to call it DI, Diversity, Inclusion, and Equity, because that's what it does. It just kills people. But we did cover this before, but the University of Illinois is now requiring all faculty to engage in diversity, equity, inclusion, activism, or else. And this came from a story by the College Fix, and I mentioned this, I believe, on a previous podcast, and I'll tell you why in a minute while I'm bringing it up again. But just to remind people, the University of Illinois is going to mandate DEI activism from all faculty to earn tenure or a promotion, which effectively institutionalizes coerced speech. And the article goes on to say that universities have long evaluated professors for promotion and tenure based upon their record of excellence in research, teaching, and service. But the flagship public university in Illinois will soon evaluate professors based on their commitment to forwarding a particular political ideology as well. The University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign has approved a policy that will require faculty to contribute to DEI efforts to earn tenure or a promotion. For now, it's optional. In a few years, it's a requirement, according to a policy dated March 26th. So there you go. You have to participate into DEI activism and prove it up if you want tenure at the University of Illinois. Well, guess what? It's about to get worse because Campus Reform is now reporting that the Illinois State University is requiring students to pass a diversity, equity, inclusion course to be eligible to graduate. Unbelievable. This requirement will be applicable to all students that enroll in the university beginning in the fall of 2023. Illinois State University is requiring students to pass a diversity, equity, and inclusion course to be eligible to graduate. That is just unbelievable. A local NPR outlet, according to this article by Campus Reform, reports that specifics on the requirement, collectively known as the IDEAS course, will be made public prior to the spring of 2023. I mean, this is a reason not to go to Illinois State University. That's right. You heard me say it. You should not go to ISU strictly because your kids would have to go through a DEI course. That is nonsense. And by the way, where are they getting any idea that this is even necessary? What do they have, like, huge racial problems there? What's the deal? And if that's the case, then talk to the administration. They've been running the joint for so long. What's the problem here? What, they just want to indoctrinate everybody? But of course, remember, ISU is the premier teaching school in the state of Illinois. Everybody knows if you want to become a teacher, that ISU apparently has a great pedagogy for teachers. That's where you go if you want to be a teacher. Huh. Well, it's no surprise then that you have to go through DEI instruction in order to graduate. After all, remember, looking back, the Illinois General Assembly just passed teaching and learning, critical race theory teaching and learning standards that must be part of the curriculum at higher educations to indoctrinate the teachers so the teachers can then indoctrinate the kids when they go out to teach. If you remember, we had that huge argument last year about them teaching culturally responsive teaching and learning standards. That's what it's called, culturally responsive teaching and learning standards. Well, that is not for teachers in the profession right now. It's for teaching schools. And the teaching school in this state is Illinois State University. But it's not enough to indoctrinate teachers. Apparently, you have to indoctrinate the entire student body before they graduate, or else they don't. It's just remarkable that they're getting away with this. Okay, next up, next thing that I want to talk about was this story. It comes from the Federalist, and it's one written by Elaine Donnelly. And I looked into her a little more. She runs an interesting site, and I'm surprised I have not connected with her before now. Hopefully, maybe I can get her on my podcast. But Elaine Donnelly is the president of the Center for Military Readiness, which is an independent public policy organization that reports on and analyzes military and social issues. Hey, this is right up my alley. Right up my alley, especially after what I heard from my son, who is at West Point right now. He came home for the weekend, and he had an alarming story to tell about one of his classmates. Apparently, she attempted suicide twice, and instead of kicking her out, she was told she could just do remote online learning. Now, there should be a push to kick her out. We'll see if they do that, because that's a problem. Anyway, this particular article is from Elaine Donnelly, and she writes that it was gratifying to watch Arkansas Republican Senator Tom Cotton question Christine Wormuth, the first female Secretary of the Army, at a recent Senate Armed Services Committee hearing. Senator Cotton, a Ranger-qualified infantry veteran, respectfully chastised Wormuth for the fiasco that the new Army combat fitness test has become. For the past 3 years, the Army has tried but failed to implement gender-neutral standards in the new combat fitness test, mainly because of high failure rates among female trainees. After women in combat rules changed in 2015, the Army designated the ACFT to be sex neutral with identical requirements and scoring tables for men and women. The new ACFT would replace the longstanding Army physical fitness test. That's the test that I took for all the years that I was at West Point and in the Army, so for 10 years. That test was sex normed with different requirements and scores to allow for male-female physical difference. So, for example, on that test, to max out, females had to do less push-ups, but still a significant number to max, while females had to do a few more sit-ups than the males in order for the females to max. So they compensated for the core strength that the females have versus the upper body strength that the males have. All of us had to run a 2-mile test, and of course that was normed also for sex differences. At that time, women were not eligible for direct combat ground combat assignments. Now that they are, sex norm training standards are untenable. There is no sex norming on the battlefield. However, we all know that there is, right? We all know that there is. Of course, tasks are sex normed. Just ask my son who went through Ranger School when the women went and graduated from Ranger School. He will tell you they didn't carry the heavy weapons. So there you go. So even in those training environments, they are still sex norming, no matter what they want to pretend they are doing or not. Anyway, several versions of the ACFT, the Army Combat Fitness Test, their new physical fitness test, has failed. This year, the Army dropped sex neutrality and reinstated sex norming. Surprise! Secretary Wormuth acknowledged the Army's stunning reversal, suggesting that the new ACFT was more challenging. Cotton responded bluntly, "The new standards are pathetic. They're absolutely pathetic." Cotton noted that soldiers qualifying for infantry will have to do only 10 push-ups instead of 35. He also quoted the Army's frequently asked questions webpage, stating that commanders may not set higher standards for acceptance or retention in a combat unit. This, said Cotton, is going to get people killed. I couldn't agree more. Anyway, the article goes on. I encourage you to read it. It's in the Federalist, but it's pretty important that we don't kid ourselves when it comes to military readiness and preparation, and the fact that women and men are built differently. I'll be honest with you, if my sons were go to the field, if they had to be in a combat situation, which required a lot of upper body strength to maybe remove them to safety, I think I'd want another guy helping out. That said, let's also be honest. Women have been in combat. In fact, they're in combat right now. They've been in combat for, I would say, a couple centuries, quite frankly. They've been on the battlefield. I cannot remember the girl's name, the soldier's name, but she was one of the first soldiers captured when we invaded Iraq, and she was a transportation soldier driving in a convoy, got diverted, and she ended up getting captured. Are you telling me she wasn't in combat? Of course she's in combat. Now with a fluid battlefield and the ability for the enemy to strike and almost anywhere, nearly everybody can be considered in a combat situation. Some, of course, are more engaged. I'm not going to kid you there. But the fact that women are not in combat is ridiculous. We should have always recognized that they are, whether or not they're flying helicopters or meeting other transportation needs or firing missiles, which then would make them also a target for the enemy. So regardless, I think that's one thing that we've completely screwed up, is actually recognizing that women have been part of combat for a very long time. All right. So next article I thought that I would cover is a crime article. And this is just, it's just horrific. So we're Chicago this weekend, 5 killed, 30 wounded. That's the final tally, according to HeyJackass.com. That's the website that keeps us up to date on our crime statistics. But 5 killed, 30 wounded. Well, unfortunately, one of them was a 16-year-old kid who was shot and killed by a 17-year-old. Yes, the 17-year-old boy fatally shot a 16-year-old during a chaotic evening in Millennial Park. He opened fire near the bean after the younger boy jumped on his back and punched him in the head. Okay, maybe they knew each other. I don't know. This is according to a Chicago Tribune article. As Marion Richardson was being arrested, he told the police, "You guys ain't gonna do nothing anyways." 100 expletive walking toward me. And what am I supposed to do? Y'all just sitting there, bro. Richardson faces one count of second-degree murder, alleging he killed 16-year-old Shondell Holiday in an unreasonable belief that he was justified in firing out of self-defense. Richardson is also charged with aggravated battery with a firearm, a more serious felony, meaning the case was automatically transferred to adult court. Cook County Judge Mary Marubio ordered Richardson held on a $250,000 cash bond with electronic monitoring. He will have to pay the entire amount in order to be released to house arrest as his case is pending. So he's got to come up with $25,000. Police said hundreds of young people were in Millennial Park on Saturday evening, creating a mass disturbance. In court Monday, Murphy said the large group gatherings are known as trends, which are advertised on social media, and Richardson had participated in one previously. Before the shooting Saturday, Richardson noticed a group of people nearby that included a boy with whom he had gotten into a fight at a previous trend. That group at one point seemed to disperse, but then came back and began following Richardson, according to the prosecutors. So the tit for tat went on, and one thing led to another. The guy jumps him, and Richardson responds by firing his weapon. I mean, the 17-year-old with a weapon. And these guys want us to continue to abide by gun laws that are unconstitutional in many cases, FOID, concealed carry, and yet they won't make these unauthorized users of weapons pay the price for it. So anyway, that's what's going on. And Lori Lightfoot's response: we're going to ban any unaccompanied minors in the city's Loop area. That was her response. Okay, well, just a reminder, something like over 1,000 police left the police force in the last 12 to 18 months, and they haven't been replaced. So we have a problem as summer heats up, and so does typically the crime in Chicago. Anyway, those are just a few stories that I wanted to make you aware of. And join me next time on my podcast. Coming up in my next podcast, we're going to talk to AJ Kalkunis. He's the owner of Chicago Prime Italian and Chicago Prime Steakhouse and Avanti's Banquet. You may remember him from the COVID era, where I actually had numerous conversations with him on Zoom interviews about what was happening to the business community over COVID. We're going to get an update with him and find out how's it going with inflation, the difficulty in hiring people to do the job, high property taxes in the state, and lots of other questions. Also on my podcast next time, we'll be talking to a Dupage County resident who just received in the mail his postcard from the Dupage County clerk saying, "Hey, why don't you sign up for permanent vote by mail?" Well, of course, we knew this was going to happen, and he confirms it, and he will confirm it on our podcast. But, of course, he got a postcard for his son, who has not been in the house for a couple years now and should not be receiving any sort of postcard about permanent vote by mail status. Thank you for joining me on my podcast today. Sign up for my newsletter at breakthrough-ideas.com. You'll get a weekly recap of all the work that we've done here. Again, that's breakthrough-ideas.com. Thank you.